The opinions expressed on the Custody Queen Show are for informational purposes only and are not a substitute for personal, professional legal advice. The persons discussed are fictional and not based on actual clients.
Thought it was love, had kids in between. You can count on us, we're the Custody Queens. Yeah, you can count on us, we're the Custody Queens.
Good morning, everybody. We have Judge Jackson Lucky joining us today. Hello, Jackson.
Hello.
And I have with me my other Custody Queens. I have Samantha McBride and I have Lindsay Fonseca sitting with us, and we are going to bring some good family law stuff to you today.
So I think we should get started with an icebreaker.
Yes, let's do it. Let's make Judge feel a little uncomfortable like he did back in the day.
I feel like that's going to be a hard thing to do, but I like this question. If you could have 3 wishes, what would they be?
Okay, so 3 wishes. Number 1, being a former family law judge, I'd say I want to stay married forever.
Love that.
Number 2, one of my goals, and this is something that Kristen gets to do with her dad, but my daughter's finishing up her 2nd year of law school right now, and I have this dream that one day we'll try a case together.
Oh, that's cool.
And my 3rd wish is my wife and I have a huge extended family. My family's actually really tight with her family, and we want to build our own retirement community where both our families will live in separate houses on the same property.
That's amazing. That's one of my wishes. I think everyone kind of in some way wants to do this, but just have everyone live around you, like find a neighborhood, have your friends, have your family. I love that wish.
Yeah, my daughter, she's getting older now, and a couple years ago I was like, when you go to college, and she's like, no, I'm never leaving you. And I'm like, I'll build you a house in the backyard. Our neighbors during COVID, all of a sudden they just started building like a 4,000 square foot house in their backyard, and I'm like, get the brain going. And now that she's 10, she's like, Mom, I have to grow up sometime. And I'm like, wait, 2 years ago you were saying you were going to live with me forever. So that, and we always want our kids to go out and find their own way, but I would not mind if she had a pod or a large pod in my backyard.
Well, my daughter says that she is going to find a place where we can live within walking distance of her. So that wouldn't be bad. So I'm thinking like compound in one place, and then like maybe down by the beach we can have a house near hers.
There you go. There you go. I love it. Yeah, when I went to college, everyone said, why did you go so far? And I said, well, I didn't want my mom and dad just popping up anytime. They're like, but you went all the way across the country.
And then you came all the way back and worked with your dad.
I know. full circle. I'm a glutton for torture. No, I have loved every minute of working with family, and if you get the opportunity to do that with your daughter, I think it is one of the most invaluable experiences that I will cherish forever.
I'm very, very happy where I am. But that's the one thing that could pull me away, maybe as kind of a capstone right before I retire from practice.
And the cool thing is now, full circle, when I challenge him, before he was teacher, I was student, and now I'm like, well, no, I wholeheartedly, respectfully disagree. So it has been a very, very fun journey. And a journey that actually started, I think you were the very first judge I was ever in front of. Actually, no, I did a motion to be relieved before you, where I swore myself in. We were just talking about that on another show. Yeah, I stood up with the crowd, and then the very nice clerk in 201 was like, And I'm like, just kidding. I'm an officer of the court for life. But they build character.
Well, that makes me feel both honored and a little old with you saying, oh, you're one of the first judges I ever appeared in front of.
It's true for me too, by the way. Yes, it's true for me too. I think I had like a case status conference in front of you, and I was like shaking in my boots. You were very nice to me. I don't think you can mess up a case status conference.
You'd be surprised.
Yeah, that's true.
No, I remember all the attorneys, especially my dad was saying that you could not ask for a better judge to have, getting your feet wet. And although Dane had me up until 2 a.m. preparing for every possible thing that could have happened, but you definitely made us new attorneys feel like we were going to make it through the day.
Yeah.
I that makes me feel good because I try to always think, what's somebody going through as they're coming to court, whether they're a person who's representing themselves, whether they're a represented client, or whether it's a lawyer appearing in a courtroom. The situation is stressful for everybody. And I think sometimes lawyers and judges, legal professionals, forget what it's like to be new or forget what it's like to be scared. And to the extent that we can make it less scary for people, I think that's what court officers can do.
Yeah, you definitely threw me a bone one time. I'm not going to name opposing counsel. No, him and I are friends. But it was the bifurcation of a marriage status. And you looked at me like I knew, the factors that you were supposed to go through. And you're like, Miss Holstrom, would you like to go? And I'm like, well, no, I think this is so-and-so's motion. I think he should have to. And of course, he didn't know him by heart anyway. I had to pull him out. But I was like, thank you.
Well, I'll tell you a funny story because nowadays, having left family law in 2016 and then now doing private family law judging as well as mediation, I don't have to take marital status. And so I was doing a private judging case just recently, and the attorneys were like, Your Honor, would you like to take status? And I'm like, wouldn't you?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure you looked at my face and I was like, well, no, I think it's opposing counsel's motion. And I'm thinking, I don't have these on me.
That is funny. So, Judge Lucky, how long were you in family law in Riverside?
I was in family law in Riverside for 7 years. I was 3 years as one of the regular family law judges, and then they tapped me for supervising judge of family for my last 4. So about a little over half my judicial career as a sworn judge I spent in family law.
And then where'd you go after that?
Then I went to criminal for 3 years, and then I went to what we call unlimited civil for 3 years. And for non-legal professionals, how I describe unlimited civil is it's every kind of case that doesn't fit into a specialty court.
There you go.
And so we had everything from eminent domain cases, medical malpractice, contract disputes, real estate disputes, governmental issues. So if it wasn't criminal, family, civil, probate, or what we call limited civil or small claims, then it came to the unlimited civil department, and we tried to figure out what to do with it.
Yeah, that's my mom actually is a research attorney at the civil courthouse, so I think you might have worked with her for a time.
Oh, really?
Yeah, her name's Carrie. We don't share the same last name anymore. There was a divorce. Her name's Carrie Brown now.
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
Okay. I didn't know the relationship.
Yeah.
Oh, well, that's so great.
Yeah. And
Okay,
then now you're
I would
at
say,
Jams.
what was your favorite?
My favorite?
What type of law?
Tough question. But I will say that family was probably my favorite. There were aspects, and I'll say that criminal, and it's not criminal's fault, was my least favorite just because as a lawyer I had done criminal. And one of the reasons I became a judge was to do something new. So it wasn't that there was anything wrong with criminal. It was just I'd done that for 14 years as a career before I became a judge. I thought family was where I was, I hope, doing the most good.
Absolutely.
And so that's why it was my favorite. Was I was explaining to somebody who was a criminal practitioner, and he said, we need good judges in criminal. And I said, you do need good judges in criminal. I said, but you really need good judges in juvenile dependency and family because they're high volume places. So I was handling 25 or so cases per day in family. And what I was saying to somebody is most of those cases resolved by some kind of agreement. Some of them continue. And then about 2 or 3 times a day, I would say, I had to make a meaningful decision about somebody's family. And when you make those decisions, they're changing that family's life. And so you add those up, and let's be conservative and say I made 2 meaningful decisions a day. And so that's roughly 10 a week. So that's roughly 500 per year. And so when you put those all together, the amount of impact that you're having as a family law judge, is huge. And when you think, well, I could have a really good judge or maybe a less attentive judge on a case, then the individual judge makes a huge difference over time. And so when I compare that with, say, my work in criminal trials, where the jury is making the ultimate decision, not the judge. The judge is making some decisions as the case goes along that may affect the case, but usually does not affect the outcome. And the number of jury trials I would do per year was maybe 25. And so I would say, the number of meaningful decisions that I make that are life-changing for people as a criminal trial judge are maybe 2 or 3 a year, right, as opposed to 500. So family, definitely.
When you put it that way, it means a lot. And I can say over the 14 years that I've been doing this, you are definitely the most understanding. I think that you were one of, and I was talking to my dad about having, Judge Lucky on the show, and we were actually just talking to him behind the scenes. But Dane reminded me that what you did, Judge Lucky, is you took family law and you were innovative and you made it your own. But you really encouraged settlement. You encouraged people to go out in the hallway and have conversations, have hard conversations. And one thing that you always said that I always respected was that, a compromise is not something that, it's something that you're going to be happy with, but also unhappy with. You're getting something you want, and you're also not getting something you want. And I actually use that in my consults constantly, because people think, oh, I want to hire an attorney that's going to get me everything I want. But that's not reasonable.
I think that's so important. I would come out, when I did family law, there's no playbook, right? So people tell you what they do, and then you think, well, that doesn't sound that great, or that sounds great. And so I tried to find ways to communicate with people the way that I would hope that people would communicate with me. And so at the beginning of the day, I'd come down and just stand, not back where I sat on the bench, but just right where people were sitting. And I tried to speak to them as plainly as I could and just say, look, I don't know your kids and I don't love your kids. So if you want me making decisions about your kids, think about the results, right? And think about the position you're in. You do know your kids and you do love your kids. And if you two can't figure it out, I'm going to disappoint you. There's no way that I'm going to do better as a stranger than parents who know and love their kids. The disappointing thing is that didn't work all the time. Maybe, I don't know what the percentage is, but the thing that made me optimistic was it did work sometimes. Mm-hmm. And there were some times when people would say, yeah, you know what, Lucky, I don't trust you to make decisions about my kids. And that's okay with me.
No, it definitely, I can tell you I probably had more cases than not, actually, just by you standing on the same level. I think that you're human to them and not being some, man in a robe that is untouchable, that's going to come down harshly. I think that just being in front of us and being human and relatable, and you saying I have kids and, I don't love your kids. And as harsh as that sounds, it's very true. But then I can take, as an attorney, I can take that back and say, these judges are reading papers about your kids. They're reading both sides. You're speaking in front of them for 10, 15, 20 minutes, and you're expecting them to make a life-changing decision, or we can change our posture a bit and see if there's a middle ground here. And I would say more often than not, when I was assigned in front of you, that we were able to come to some sort of agreement, or at least on some of the issues. Sometimes you got to throw it and say, okay, we got to let the judge make the call here. But I do believe that, when we got that RFO assigned to you, I can tell you, our attorneys were very happy because we knew you were going to read the paperwork. And
that's not something to take lightly. That's a lot of paperwork.
And you were going to read holster points and authorities and evidentiary objections. But there wasn't a question of, hey, are we going to get up there and he's going to have no clue what's going on here? Because unfortunately, sometimes I do think judges have so much on their plate. Sometimes they are pushed for time. But we were able to use your speech and go back and say, hey, look, what can we agree on here? And more often than not, we could resolve some of those issues. Well,
that's wonderful to hear. You like to think that you're not tilting at windmills and just saying stuff that nobody's listening to. Judges like to feel important, so you made me feel important today.
No, I mean, I think it's a really good point, though. And, at Custody Queens, we always try to really settle anything that we can settle, no matter how big or small of an issue. But when you go into court and you have a judge telling you, hey, go in the hall and talk, you'd be surprised how many times you come back and after saying, Your Honor, we absolutely have no dispute, being told, or we have tons of disputes, being told, go into the hallway and come back, and you come back and, yep, well, we agreed. Yeah, here, and it's just the way it works. I think a lot of times when people get an attorney and they start to get involved in litigation, they forget that litigation is like 1 or 2 days over a course of a period of time, and there's so many other things that you can agree on rather than just send it to the judge, because it's not always the best decision when the judge makes it. Even if they want to make a good decision, even if they've read every word or every fact, it's still a tough call. So I always say to my clients, you're always rolling the dice when you go before a court. So you might have to do it, and there's some issues that you can't avoid, especially safety issues, but if you're in a position where you can settle some of it, you should probably pursue those avenues if you can first.
I think that's so important because I tell everybody as a joke, I lost 50 IQ points when I became a judge. and the reason is because when you're a lawyer and you're prepping a case, you have the luxury of time, you have the luxury of talking to your client, you have the luxury of not having to follow the rules of evidence. And so you have much less of a filter in knowing what's going on. And then as a judge, you're getting multiple filters. You're getting the people who are actually living it. They're only telling you part of the story, and that's understandable.
No way.
Not blaming them, but
or we're twisting it a bit.
Maybe. And then you have lawyers who are, I think, for very good reason, to represent their clients, strategically picking which facts they're going to put in front of the court. And so when I get it, I get a really incomplete picture. And I tell people all the time, do you want the person who knows the least and has nothing at stake to make the decision? Or do you want the people who know the most and who have something at stake to make the decision? And I think that litigation is necessary sometimes, but as we've discussed here, it should be a last resort.
No, I agree. And I think there's a couple times that you've actually made decisions on cases that I've been on that I agreed wholeheartedly with you, and I represented, the adverse, party. And we do our job as attorneys and advocate for our clients with painting the picture that we have, but also trying to minimize the exposure. But there are times where I wholeheartily respected the decision that you made, and I said, if I was a judge, I would have made the same decision. And
now you're just sucking up.
No, but there was
greatest judge of all time.
No, there was a couple times that I'm sitting there going, yeah, I 100% agree with this decision. But I will say the one time that you made me feel so good is you did this often, is that if attorneys did come to an agreement, you would always thank us, and you would publicly tell our clients what great attorneys we had, and that they should be so grateful for us. And I'm like, yes, thank you. And you're getting people are asking for your business cards on your way out, and you're like, well, I actually really didn't do that much. This is great advertising, but no, there was Dane said it perfectly. You took family law and you made it your own, and then we were able to add to it. But you really encouraged people to make decisions in their own lives without rolling the dice.
Thank you. I'm glad to know that it works sometimes, because sometimes when you're up there and it feels like people are so angry, you don't know that you're having that kind of impact. So it's nice to hear it. And it's not like people write fan letters to judges.
That's a great point. I just realized that.
You don't get Yelp reviews?
Talking to an audience that's basically not responding to you. So you might not really know if you're a crowd pleaser there.
Exactly. Well, when you haven't pleased the crowd, but you don't know necessarily. Every once in a while, I would get a thank you letter from somebody, which was gratifying. But most of the time, and I'm not saying that you should go, pat your judge on the head for doing a good job, but it is tough sometimes. And I don't mean to overstate it, because being a judge is really an amazing job. But it is tough sometimes to know, how am I doing? Because unlike at a regular job where maybe you have a supervisor or manager, you don't normally have kind of mentors coming in and watching your performance, so to speak, or how you're doing. And so you'll get some negative feedback. And I'm not saying that everybody's fishing for compliments, but you also want to know, well, am I doing okay? Am I providing service to my community? And that's something that's super important, I think, for almost every judge.
Yeah, and there's times where I'm sitting in the courtroom, we'll be there for a couple hours and you're listening case by case, and a lot of them are, people representing themselves and they don't know the law, and the judges are doing their best to help them how they can and guide them in the right direction. But, after like 4 hours, I'm like, this is a tough job. Like sometimes I'm ready to rip my hair out. There's just no way that this is for me, And so I try to put myself in their shoes sometimes and be calm and patient, because it's not an easy job. It's not an easy job.
I won't say it's an easy job, and I think that family in particular is difficult because of volume, lack of resources. I could kind of go on and on about why family law judging is difficult, and I think family law lawyering is difficult for a lot of the same reasons. But, almost every judge I know thinks it's a great job. And so I don't want people thinking that judges are sitting around going, woe is me, I have such a terrible, hard job. It has its moments where you're just sitting there going, this is really tough. There are tough decisions that you have to make. But overall, you get to work with professionals who treat you nicely because they have to. And so there are a lot worse jobs to have. I worked a bunch of odd jobs when I was in college. And I won't say my worst one, but definitely my most challenging one was I was doing night service calls on an Air Force base for things like plumbing. And at the particular base where I worked, they had these clay pipes, and the tree roots would grow through the pipes, and so they would frequently stop up for the toilets. And we would get calls at 2 o'clock in the morning, and I lived about 25 minutes away. I'd have to drive onto the base, and I'd be snaking out a toilet, and you're literally like elbow deep in other people's poo. And so every time I'm thinking this job sucks, I think, yeah, it's not 2 a.m., I'm not elbow deep in anybody else's feces today. I'm doing just fine.
That's an amazing reference point. I'm not doing too bad.
Well, I started for Dane cleaning the toilets, so am I on the same page?
You did. You've had every job with Dane.
When I started, it was so long ago, I used a typewriter.
Yeah.
That I would address envelopes for Dane, and I was so bad using the typewriter. I think I used so much of the correction fluid because I could not figure out how to use that typewriter. But that's literally how we sent out mail, was using a typewriter.
Well, I was Dane's assistant for a period of time.
Yeah, I nominated you to that job.
Yes, I was nominated
the
overnight.
Best assistant he ever had.
I was the best assistant. Yeah, I was the best. It was terrifying. I learned a lot. I learned how busy Dane is and also how smart he is, but yeah, and that was actually the first position I had after becoming a licensed attorney. I was his assistant, and I highly recommend it, honestly, because I learned a lot from him.
Yeah, we throw you in the trenches real quick there.
Yeah, I came in one day and she was like, you work for Dane now. I'm like, I thought I already did. She's like, no, but you're his assistant too. And I actually had 2 desks, and I ran back and forth between my desks. But yeah, it was a good time.
So was there any cases, Judge, that pulled on your heartstrings, or, I'm sure there was, but was there any life-changing cases to you where you really went home and were like, I really hope I got that right?
Boy, I had a lot of domestic violence cases like that, and for both reasons, right? Most domestic violence cases, somebody is at risk, and they're petitioning the court for protection, and you're listening to the evidence, and you're hoping that you get it right. And then occasionally, as you know, as practitioners, people use a domestic violence restraining order request as a tactical or strategic move on custody, visitation, things like that.
Way too often. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and so the difficulty is, again, you're only getting part of the picture. A lot of times when people are self-represented, or even sometimes when they have attorneys, the evidence that you need to make the best decision isn't getting in front of you. And you're just hoping you get it right. And there are a number of cases, and I remember one where I had one parent who was alleging that the other parent was being abusive. It was a situation where it kept coming back and kept coming back. And I believe 100% that I made the right decision in that case by always saying no, because I didn't believe the person was telling the truth when they said that the other person was being abusive. But they kept coming back for a year, and I never knew 100% whether I was getting it right. And even thinking about it now, we had all kinds of investigations going on, and everything kept coming back that there was nothing there. And so I feel like I probably got it right, but there is still always going to be that thought in the back of my mind. Did I just blow it?
Especially with domestic violence, because, it can be, you get it wrong, it could be fatal. And sometimes even when we're taking cases and I'm judging the credibility of our own client, and nowadays, we can have so much evidence, but we just had this seminar at the ACFLS with AI, and it was crazy on how much stuff can be deep faked or duplicated or putting my face on someone else's, and that's a real thing now. And I think it kind of scares me a little bit of how easy the accusations can be made or discredited.
Well, it's funny, I'm on an AI committee where I work now at JAMS, and I was doing a presentation with one of my colleagues, actually a couple of my colleagues, but one of them had what he told me was an AI-generated commercial for, I think it was Virgin Cruises or Airlines with Jennifer Lopez. And I thought it was a parody where Jennifer Lopez was acting and saying that it was an AI. He told me that it actually was an AI. So I haven't fact-checked this yet, but he's a person I trust, Ryan Abbott over at JAMS. Doesn't do family law cases, but is an expert in the areas of AI and intellectual property. And he said, no, that was completely computer generated. And
crazy.
That was amazing to me.
At our conference, they showed a video, and halfway through the video, it literally went from the original person in the video to like his son, Sam. It was a completely different person, but it was done, like the hat was on exactly the same way. And if you're watching this video, you had no clue that it was a different person's face halfway through the video. And they're telling us all these things that we need to watch for and asking our clients for the data and the metadata. But it was very eye-opening of how easy some of this stuff can be faked at this point.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. Unfortunately, we are all out of time for part 1, but we are going to have Judge Lucky back for part 2 next week. So make sure that you tune in at 8:30 a.m. on Go Country 105. And remember, let love rule.